So here we are with our visualization here. We have it set up where you can use these radio buttons to select the different regions. Let's actually change that back from radio to menu, mostly because I don't like the radio buttons. So the next thing we want to do is try to investigate the data that is over here. Basically, Vega-Lite is using defaults to figure out what we should use for these scales. And the way that it's doing it is it's taking the min and max. And so that indicates that there is some data out here that we just cannot see because the population is quite small. So these are countries that are going to have very high incomes and very small populations. And we just frankly can't see them at this point. So we want to investigate this a little bit further. The easiest way to do this is implementing panning and zooming. And the interesting thing about this is what we're going to do is we're going to change the orientation of this frame here. We're going to be able to zoom in and out of the data by kind of manipulating the box that this visualization is contained in. And it's quite easy to go ahead and implement a zoom, which is what we'll start with. In our params here, we're going to specify VL select interval, and we are going to bind that to the scales. And now, just with that simple little addition here, you can see that if I click and hold down my mouse, I can move around the screen. Essentially, I'm moving the orientation of the edge of this frame and the data within inside of it. And if I use the mouse trackpad, I can scroll in and I can scroll out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just remove this initial information there so everything is color-coded. And now this is pretty cool in the sense that it allows you to zoom up on areas within the frame. Essentially, it's dynamically creating the X and Y values here, and it gives us a more close-up sense of what the data looks like. So this is pretty cool. It's still maybe not as informative as it could be. So let's go ahead and add my favorite tooltip option. If you have been following along, you'll recognize that I love a tooltip. And we're going to set it to be field nominal, and it's going to be set to be the country. So as we scroll over these, it's going to actually tell us what country it is. So I'm going to zoom up on this data, and I can see that this is India, this is China. I can see some of these countries here that have lower health and also lower income. You can take a look at that. I've been very interested in these kind of outlier values over here. Now, it can be tricky to find them because they're still so small. And notice what happens is as I zoom in, you feel like the individual circles would get bigger. But let's just look at China. If I put it in the center, as I zoom in and out, the size of this circle doesn't actually change. That's because it's fixed based on the population. If it started changing size, then it'd be very hard to map it back to this population legend here, unless this was dynamically changing too, which you can do. But what that means for these outlier values, the ones I was very interested in, they're still pretty hard to see out here. Let's just redo that. So I can sort of see one out here on the outskirts. I'm also going to just make this a little bit wider. That can help. Let's specify the width to be maybe 700. Okay, it will be next impossible to see this in the video, but let's see if I can scroll up on this. Start to see, cannot find them. I can see a few of these here. Like we have Singapore and Kuwait, but there's some values I really just can't see. It's right there. I'm careful, there it is, Qatar. Okay, so Qatar is probably the one that has the highest limit here. Again, really, really hard to see. In part because I am zooming in both the X and Y values and it's easy to get lost. So one thing you can do is if you really only want to zoom on one aspect of the data, either the X or Y axis, you would actually want to do a pan instead. And what we do to specify pan is simply to add a specification to this bind here, and we'd actually add the encoding and we would bind it to the X value. Now what'll happen is I can only scroll income, my X value, and I can't move around on the Y value. If I wanted to pan the Y, change that to Y, and now all of a sudden I can pan on the Y value. So those can be helpful. We're still not quite there in terms of being able to investigate these points. It's a little bit more helpful, but we can do more to make this easier by using different types of interactions that we'll cover in the next videos.